the door I wasn't supposed to unlock. I learned a long time ago that buildings remember what people try to forget. I'm a property manager, 35, keys jangling like a pocket full of confessions, a maintenance app that tells me when the water heater is sulking and which elevator wants attention. Call me Max. I run a mid-rise on the edge of the river where the city pretends to be calm. We rent to people who like brick and light and the illusion of privacy. Every door has a story. Most nights, I keep mine to the hallway. The night this began, a summer storm pressed its palm to the city and the power flickered like a nervous eye. I was making the rounds with a flashlight, checking the generators, when I saw a toe of red leather in the stairwell on 6. The shoe was attached to a woman in a gray dress, back pressed to the wall, one hand on her chest as if she could steady her own heart. "You okay?" I asked, voice soft like I was approaching a cat on a ledge. She laughed without humor, just remembering how to breathe. "I hate elevators." She held up a paper bag from the bakery on the corner, warm grease seeping into the top fold. "Alibi," she said, "if anyone asks." Her name was Leela. Unit 6B, new tenant, lease signed by a husband I had only seen in a very expensive headshot attached to an email signature. ADRINV, chef owner. I knew his restaurants, the kind of places that called butter a philosophy and cost a day's wage for a memory. I knew the type of quiet that follows men like him, too. Admiration lacquered over fear. "Stairs are friendlier than elevators," I said, "regardless of what they tell you." Leela smiled, the kind you make when you want the world to be a simpler country. "You're the key man," she said. "I've seen you in the lobby with that belt. It looks heavy." "Weight of other people's problems," I said. "Lift with your legs." Her hair was damp from the weather, a halo of frizz that refused to follow rules. The bakery bag smelled like sugar and something almond. She looked at me like I was both harmless and next, then shifted the bag to her other hand. "Do you ever open a door and want to close it again fast?" she asked. "Daily," I said. "Sometimes the door wins." "Come up," she said suddenly, surprising both of us. "I'll trade a croissant for you telling me which neighbor plays the trumpet at midnight." "You don't want that croissant after a stairwell," I said. But I followed her to 6B because I am a man and the storm was loud, and because the look on her face said she was tired of being alone with whatever she'd been alone with. Her apartment had the new tenant smell, paint that still believed in the future, cardboard boxes that held two lives arguing about what mattered. She flicked on a lamp and the room bloomed honey. On the console table by the door sat 3 copies of the same glossy magazine with Adrian's face on the cover. He looked like someone who didn't have to be told yes twice. Leela set the bag down and pulled out 2 pastries. "We'll eat them guilty," she said. "It improves the flavor." I stood in the polite space men are taught to hold when they don't know the rules. Leela sat on the arm of the sofa, legs crossed, shoes off, toes painted the color of cherries. The pastry flaked like an apology. We talked like strangers who had decided to risk becoming witnesses, about the heat, the cranky elevator, the dog in 4C who thought he was a person. When she laughed, it loosened something in my chest I didn't realize had been tightened for a while. Then she asked, "What's the worst secret a door has told you?" I should have said something gentle. I said, "A master key is a dangerous religion." Her gaze flicked to my belt. "Is that one of them?" I touched the black fob clipped near my hip. "It's an admin pass," I said. "Reads the locks, pulls the logs, opens anything if I tell it to." "Anything." "In this building," I said. "I'm not God, just the person you call when the gods are late." The room shifted. The storm leaned closer. Leela set her pastry down and wiped almond dust from her fingers. "He asked for a second lock," she said, eyes on the magazine with her husband's face. 2 weeks after we moved in, he asked if we could add one to the bedroom because the old one feels flimsy. He meant because my trust does. You don't have to tell me any of this, I said, and felt a tug in the opposite direction. I know, she said. Sometimes telling a stranger is like writing a note and leaving it under a rock. The rock can't gossip. She stood and crossed to the bedroom door. Would you look at it? The lock was new, a fashionable square of brushed steel installed by a contractor who cared but too quickly. It read my fob as if it were a VIP and blinked green. Reflex took me one step into the room, then ethics tugged me back. Leela moved past me and sat on the corner of the bed, the mattress sighing under her. Adrian is on television 3 nights a week, she said. I know the names of his knives. I don't know the last time he asked me a question that wasn't about a reservation. We all perform, I said. Some of us get ratings. She looked up. Does your key remember who opened what and when? It does. Could you show me? Yes, I said, because I am careful until I am not. If you're asking whether he's brought someone here. I'm asking whether the door is lying to me, she said. If it is, I want to be the one who catches it in the act. I went to my office an hour later feeling like a magician hiding a dove. The building's access logs live behind a login that lives behind my boss and the idea of trust. I told myself I was doing this to prevent a domestic explosion in 6B. I told myself a lot of things while the database chewed and produced columns of times and codes. Twice, on 2 midweek afternoons when the restaurant was dark, the bedroom lock had been opened by a temporary credential generated from my admin panel. The source device was a phone that wasn't mine. The label said ADRIEN guest. The log didn't show a face or a name or a sound. It recorded the fact of a door deciding to be open. I printed the page because sometimes paper makes rules feel more real. I folded it once. I stood at my window and watched the river doing its long, persuasive work on stone. Then I put the page in my pocket and went back up to 6B. Leela let me in like she'd been at the door for minutes. I handed her the paper. She read without moving her face, then exhaled a breath that seemed too big for her chest. Thank you, she said, and folded the page back into itself. I don't know if I wanted it to say no or yes. I can revoke the guest credential, I said. He won't be able to. He'll find another room, she said. Men like him always do. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of the page. Do you want to know a terrible thing? Before I met him, I thought jealousy was proof of love. That terrible heat. The way it manufactures meaning. I thought if no one wanted what you had, then maybe it wasn't worth having. What do you think now? That jealousy is just fear with mascara, she said, and that meaning is quieter than people say. We stood that close to the line where pain becomes performance. Then Leela did a thing I would think about later like a hinge. She stepped forward and placed her palm flat on my chest, right over my shirt pocket where the paper had been a moment earlier. The pressure was light. The electricity wasn't. Still there, she whispered, not talking about the paper. Still, I said, and the word felt like choosing a path on a map. We didn't kiss. We did something worse for my moral posture. I stayed for an hour while the storm rehearsed endings against the windows, and Leela told me about the way Adrian loved publicly and withheld privately, how he made grand gestures with witnesses and small cruelties when no one was looking. I told her about the noise the elevator made between 3 and 4, how it sounded like a man learning to breathe after being underwater. We shared the second croissant like we had no idea how metaphors work, and when I left, Leela touched the master fob at my belt like it was a rosary. The next day, the building woke to gossip disguised as concern. A woman I didn't recognize buzzed the front desk and left a message. For Adrian in 6B, the one with the knives. Tell him Ruby had a lovely time. He forgot his scarf. The doorman, who loves both secrets and clarity, wrote this down in capital letters and slid it across my desk. I slid it into the trash because the paper looked like a knife. At noon, Adrian appeared in person, smelling like smoke and salt, and the kind of confidence television prints on a person's skin. My wife thinks she heard someone at the door while she was in the shower last night, he said, tone the exact shade of a threat that thinks it's polite. Pull the camera footage for the hallway. We don't have hallway cameras between units, I said, just the lobby and stairwells. You should, he said. People need to behave. They do, I said, and we looked at each other like two men measuring a corridor. That night Leela texted me a photo of a scarf, green, expensive, hung on the back of a chair like a placeholder. Below it, one line, not mine. I typed a reply 3 times and deleted it 3 times. I ended up sending, doors only tell part of the story. She sent back, which part is yours? I told myself to step back. I didn't. The next afternoon I found myself at Adrian's restaurant because curiosity is my worst religion. It was closed to prep. The dining room smelled like lemon and ambition. Adrian saw me and grinned like I was an old friend. Max, come taste something. He handed me a spoon with a dab of something pale and perfect. Butter with brown noise, he said. It keeps people from hearing themselves chew. A woman slid in beside him, dark hair, lipstick the color of plums. You're coming Thursday, she asked him, ignoring me the way people ignore furniture. 7:30, the apartment with the view. Theirs, he said, glancing at me, amused. Not mine. He turned his grin toward me. This city runs on borrowed rooms. Rooms, remember, I said before I could stop myself. He laughed. Do they? Then I'm doomed. Tell your boss to add more memory. On Thursday, I did a reckless thing for a man who pays his bills on time. I set a silent alert on the door for 6B that would ping my phone if the guest credential opened it. At 7:42 p.m., while I was in the basement replacing a light ballast, my phone hummed like a guilty throat. At 7:45, the stairwell camera on 5 picked up a figure with hair like a raven and a scarf the exact green from my trash. At 7:47, my conscience gave up pretending and I climbed. I didn't knock. I told myself I'd intervene if a crime was occurring and counted infidelity as a crime against quiet at least. But when I reached the landing, the door to 6B opened first. Leela stood there, hair up, dress simple, eyes steady. Behind her, the room held a third presence. The woman with plum lipstick who looked at me with interest, then at Leela with something like respect, then at the scarf like it had told a joke. You're early, Leela said to the woman. I'm punctual, the woman said. Leela turned to me. This is Ruby, she said. She left something the other night. She's here to retrieve it. Then she added, she's also here to tell me the truth. I understood then that the door I'd come to stop was actually a door I'd been invited to witness. We sat, the 3 of us, at the small table under the far window with a city pretending it wasn't listening. Ruby poured wine like a person who has poured wine for men who required an audience. She told us about Adrian in a voice that refused drama, about the charm that devoured its own tale, about the way he arranged people on his life's plate and called the arrangement love. She looked at Layla and said, You didn't do anything wrong except believe him. That's not a sin, it's a symptom. Leela listened like a patient in a room with a doctor who finally named the ache. When Ruby left, her scarf reclaimed, and her number left on the console table, in case you want a friend who won't need anything, the apartment exhaled. Leela and I stood in the kitchen with the bad light and the good counter and the mistake we'd both been courting like it was a solution. "Tell me to stop," she said. "I can't do that," I said. "Then tell me to start." "We start by locking the right door," I said, and reached past her to the panel. I revoked the guest credential with a tap. The system chirped compliance. She laughed, breath catching on my jaw. "That's foreplay for men with key rings," she said, and my hands found the edge of the counter to keep from finding the curve of her waist. We didn't rush the border, we pressed against it. Her shoulder brushed mine. The soft underside of her wrist grazed my fingers. Her breath stitched the air between us. Her mouth hovered a breath away and then a breath away again. My body wanted to be a song without a chorus. My head wanted to survive the next morning. We kissed once, brief and precise, the kind of kiss that makes a promise like a contract. YouTube would have let it pass. My heart didn't. Adrian left the next week, not quietly. He knocked over a chair with his suitcase like the chair had betrayed him. He dropped his key fob on the floor and told me to mail him anything that arrived with his name on it. "Buildings are just boxes," he said. "People are what matter." "Sometimes boxes keep people safe," I said. He made a shape with his mouth that might have been a laugh and walked into the elevator without looking back. Leela stayed. She repainted the bedroom in a color that looked like a sky remembering how to be generous. She came down to my office with a plate of almond cookies and said, "I don't need a master key. I need a front door I trust." I installed a new lock that didn't care about phones or temporary permissions and gave her 2 solid keys and no grace for the third. We were careful and then we weren't, in slow increments like a dimmer rising. Sometimes at night she would press her palm to my chest and say, "Still there," and I would say, "Still," and that would be enough to sleep. We didn't put titles on anything. We put breakfasts. Coffee in mugs no one had to photograph. Miles of walking by the river. A shared habit of turning off lights no one remembered turning on. When I go back into the mechanical rooms now, the pipes hum their soft choir. The elevator stops sigh with a satisfaction I take personally. I still carry too many keys. They still remind me that access is not affection, that opening a thing because you can is different from being invited. The building keeps a ledger, silent, factual, timestamps without adjectives. I keep a different ledger, handwritten in a notebook, logging the small honesty of days. L in 6B laughed, L in 6B cried. M in the mirror looked like a man getting better at choosing which doors to knock on. The other afternoon I passed Ruby on the sidewalk. She was with a woman who had a laugh like a bell and a stare that dared the world to be boring. Ruby lifted her hand, half wave, half salute. I lifted mine back. It felt like a treaty with an empire I'm done serving. Sometimes late, I walk the hall outside 6B and listen to the gentle domestic noise of a place that has decided to be kind. The walls remember a lot more than I'd like. But when I turn the corner toward the stairs, the building teaches me the oldest lesson I know. Doors are honest. When you ask the right way, they will tell you whether you belong. And when you don't, they will let you hear yourself leaving.